Can we just stand here for a few moments, please, purely to take in how outlandishly beautiful this game is? I mean, just look at it. Actually, in fact, let's also just listen to it just for a few moments, please. To me, for what video games try to provide us, this is perfect. A fantasy world that leaves your jaw on the floor as it immerses you into its captivity. A digital prison that kept me locked away for over 200 hours on this first playthrough. And this particular inmate was more than happy to stay. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. As both a lifelong Nintendo fan and Zelda fan, I'm still actually finding it quite wild how Nintendo has given us this truly epic Zelda trilogy of games where the overriding main theme of the story encompasses all three games. You're connecting them in intimate ways. Age of Calamity was boasting to be a prequel where the timeline takes a different course. The first yet middle game, it's weird saying it, Breath of the Wild, which deals with an aftermath of the prequel, but once again in a different timeline, and now the sequel to both of these timelines, where it all still manages to foster in its own history, devoid from the previous games, yet still connecting them in many ways, many important ways. Do you want to know what got me the most hyped about this game, about Tears of the Kingdom, even after seeing all the new crazy mechanics as Nintendo drip fed us information about the games over the years as we waited for it? It was actually the thing that most people were worried about, I think, and that was going back to the same Hyrule. For me, that was the most exciting part. I've spent hundreds of hours in Breath of the Wild's Hyrule, whilst also seeing it at another time and place in Age of Calamity. I knew that Nintendo wasn't simply going to rehash the same Hyrule without adding to it significantly. And I feel that this is my personal favourite thing about Hyrule in Tears of the Kingdom. I wanted more than anything else to see how the characters had changed or moved on from the previous Hyrule that felt abandoned by civilization, left to nature and the ravages of time. Hyrule, one that I simply adore beyond words, and Nintendo did not disappoint me. That the Hyrule in Tears of the Kingdom is being reclaimed by civilization, and you both feel it and see it in most places you venture in this game. This for me made it feel like a completely different Hyrule to re-explore, and I was super eager to revisit both those places and people who I had already spent what is now essentially years getting to know. And unlike some, I truly loved the story of Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity. These are without a doubt the most character-rich in both persona and progression Zelda characters Nintendo has ever made in all their games. Say for some few moments, there's a few characters in previous Zeldas, like especially Wind Waker. I love the Ganon in Wind Waker, as a lot of people might know. As an example, the story of Link and Mithra is probably it's truly a sad and arguably one-sided love story with a tragic end. I was eager to see how, or if the original champions I had grown to love, or hate, when thinking of Revali. I was eager to see if or how they had been remembered in the following years. It's easy to forget that even for them, unlike Link's reappearance, they had all died in Breath of the Wild over 100 years ago. Who would remember them now, even in Tears of the Kingdom? world, but this is where the new champions came in, right? The likes of Riju, Yunobo, Teba, and Sidon. And what were they doing now? I loved Mipha as a character, and one of the first places I went back to was Zora's domain in Tears of the Kingdom. Then I found this place, and when the music kicked in, Mipha's music, I'm not gonna lie, I got goosebumps, and even a small lump in my throat. I came back here multiple times during my playthrough, and I just stood here. I just stood here. It was such a somber place, beautiful, comforting, but still solemn. And in recording this footage, this happened, whilst I stood there in thoughtful nostalgia. It was quite a poignant moment, reminded me once again about her tragic story, but also reminded me of how involved I had become with these characters and this world. And stories like this happened multiple times for me during my playthrough of Tears of the Kingdom, seeing all the new denizens of Hyrule, how they interact with each other and the world, man, I don't think I saw a single repeated character design in this game, but at least in terms of the Hylians. This more populated Hyrule was incredible, and I loved it. And even if you spent time just looking at their faces, their eyes, their character design, they just had so much life in them. They just were really brought to life. I can't help but salute Nintendo for their NPC and just general character design in this game. Is phenomenal.
Now where have you been? Linky, you're not a ghost, are you? Hey, that looks interesting. Phew. One step at a time. What exactly happened?
Not every character, returned. We'll miss you, Kaz. But the new ones put in place, they're just too good. I remember saying that I want more musicians in my Zelda games, much like the ones in the milk bar in Link Between Worlds, and Nintendo didn't fail me in this game. Let's just appreciate the beauty that is violin for the moment. That young girl who's actually playing a violin that you will come across in the world as part of a very cool side quest. It's just moments like this in Zelda games that just elevate this series. Just up there, truly with the greats. It's more rare than people might think for video games to be able to reuse the same world that players have spent years in. Yet somehow, even with the familiar and yet different sights, it was enough for me for it to feel both recognizable and unfamiliar. The last time I felt this was funny enough in another Zelda game, which was A Link Between Worlds. Second time I've mentioned that game now. Another goated game, may I add, Link Between Worlds. It's just but in terms of Tears of the Kingdom, another similar game in scope and size where I felt this was in the World of Warcraft and its expansion, Cataclysm. I was I was there actually on the beta of the World of Warcraft when it came out in 2002, and I you don't understand how many years that game took my life. But where I had spent years in Azeroth, which is the world of Warcraft, only for Blizzard to tear these worlds asunder in the Cataclysm expansion, forcing us to re-navigate once familiar lands that had now been transformed. Tears of the Kingdom doesn't go to quite the lengths in terms of the main lands of Hyrule, in terms of completely, I say completely, but really changing it geographically in a way like Cataclysm. But it added and changed more than enough for me to lose my bearings multiple times when I first started getting back into it, and have to reestablish myself by looking for key landmarks. And I got that sense of adventure again, which was just perfect, exactly what I needed. Many people wanted more elaborate caves, some more than others. But Nintendo went above and beyond with the new caves added to our once familiar Hyrule. I think these caves and many of the hidden wells might have been some of my favorite new things in a game to explore, and not a single one of them felt the same to me, which shows to me that Nintendo considered these a high priority in terms of their use and diversity and their inclusion. And the atmosphere in some of these places, people, just perfection. We had enemies, both old and new. They offered a larger variety, and they were all, they all felt welcome. Especially some of the new larger creatures and boss creatures and stuff. They're just so good. I'm talking about the world creatures here, and the side quests and side adventures. For me, the ones that are spread across the world offered enough variety, so they didn't feel too much like fetch quests. Which with some real standout moments as well in this game, which I was more than happy to take part in. But as we know, the greatest changes and additions to this world came in the form of the sky and the previously unrevealed by Nintendo and unknown underworld beneath Hyrule, which was the depths, which surprised, I think, nearly everyone. What I will say is that I feel Nintendo managed to create 3 utterly unique feeling worlds within this game. And before we ventured into the darkness of the depths, let me give my thoughts on the Sky Islands and what they offered for me. First and foremost, being up in the sky for me was just pure serenity. It's clear to me that Nintendo wanted this to feel like a somewhat peaceful departure from the busy world of Hyrule and the foreboding nature of the depths. They make this even more evident with the music and even how the light and the sound effects feel different up here. It is a different atmosphere up here, and it was a pleasure being up there pretty much every time I went up there. Now, the feeling of first shooting up into the sky is a gaming moment that'll live on in my memory. Sometimes, or in some locations, you'd have to break through the savage weather of Hyrule as you shot upwards, but then burst through the clouds to see a beautiful sunset. Somewhat reminiscent of the scene in the Matrix Revolutions when Neo and Trinity momentarily escaped the machines by flying through the deadly clouds covering the planet. It's funny whenever it's raining hard or the weather is bad. I'll say to my kids, just think. Above those stormy clouds is a beautiful blue sky, a Sega blue sky, which we'll see return one day. Entering the Sky Kingdom this way never got old for me. As for the Sky Kingdom itself, the ruins of the Zonai race, it has that Laputa castle in the sky feeling for sure. Studio Ghibli films like Nausicaa Castle in the Sky, Princess Mononoke clearly having a great impact on the direction of both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I very much enjoy much of what they had to offer, but there's a somewhat sad reality to the heavily advertised Sky Kingdom. It simply doesn't have enough substantial content. The substantial content that is there, I found to be utterly fantastic. The chunky stuff that is there. The starting area I found to be lovely and epic of an introduction, but I still prefer the more diverse and natural looking Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild, especially as a tutorial area as well. And although the finding of like smaller islands with treasure was initially exciting, that somewhat became lesser over the duration of the game for me, and I found myself wanting more up there. When the game in some parts offered me pure gaming greatness in the sky, there were some moments up there just incredible, but ultimately not enough to make the Sky Islands feel like a true major part of Tears of the Kingdom when compared to Hyrule, which became evidently clear. Hyrule is still the main focus of this game. This isn't a bad thing, of course, at least not for me, but I can understand, based off Nintendo's advertising, how the somewhat lesser nature of the sky being a much bigger integral gameplay focus of the game wasn't as populated as we once thought, but obviously way more populated than it was in Skyward Sword. And to lead on to this leads me to another aspect of the game, the fusing, right? When it came to fusing weapons or using fusion to tackle puzzles within the many new shrines or world, I personally loved this, and I thought it was the perfect addition to the game for you to both make use of items and approach certain puzzles in a different way. But when it came to like building vehicles for travel, especially in the sky, both my lack of imagination or desire to create something beyond what was necessary meant that I didn't fully gel with this mechanic for this purpose, and it led me to getting slightly fed up or frustrated or just eager, I suppose, with having to construct vehicles just to get to another small floating rock with a simple treasure chest on it. But still, I marveled, absolutely marveled at what you could construct in this game for travel, or just in general, mixed with the game's glorious physics engine. It was hard to hate this when the game was just so fun and so liberating. But if you instead offer me a loft wing, or perhaps a Zonai specific machine like a mechanical bird, if anyone remembers the City of Gold, it was an old cartoon. But if you offer me a Zonai specific machine like a mechanical bird, or maybe like a small mechanical dragon or helicopter, which simply required energy to travel further distances, I probably would have preferred that over constantly building random makeshift machines, even if you could save some of those designs for somewhat quicker use. I've mentioned fusing, but what about the other new mechanics like Ascend, Ultra Hand, and Recall? It still blows my mind how Nintendo have achieved these mechanics in such an already complicated 3D world. It truly does. They pretty much break the game without breaking the game, and through their use, you can have all the fun in the world with them. Something I certainly tried to do in many cases. But I suppose through their great power, I found that navigating the world and tackling puzzles became ultimately, in quite a few cases, too easy. And I was left in more times than many wondering if I was meant to do it this way, or even wondering how Nintendo might have wanted me to do it in a certain way, because I'd done it so quickly. Now of course, there was obviously one or two puzzles which still blew my mind, and I will treasure those. But like I said, of course, this is the greatness of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. How these Zelda games give you the tools to approach many things how you like, and we know it has worked incredibly well. But for me, in Tears of the Kingdom, it worked perhaps too well, and I was left missing my fun, creative, powerful, yet somewhat limited powers from Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom gives the player too many powers, I feel, and too many items to tackle puzzles. And, like I said, it's not just your powers, it's the use of the items as well, which are, vastly more in this game. I felt ultimately made the puzzles a little inferior to Breath of the Wild. I'd personally perhaps go as far as saying that the fusing ability to build things is perhaps the least unnecessary thing in the game. And given its context and how little it even connects with the story and the world and the characters who are meant to have been given this power, it's the one design choice that feels slightly out of odds with everything else, and arguably even out of odds with a Zelda game in general. But we can clearly see that it works, and there is plenty of fun to be had, and I still had that fun for the most part. And I've already mentioned shrines. There were some truly standout ones in this game, like I said, but at the same time, the higher amount of shrines made it feel like to me that more of them were simply hidden or in plain sight, and either reuse the same Finder's Orb and Follow the Light, or an instant, as soon as you found it, you entered the end zone where you'd quickly grab your Spirit Orb and complete it. The shrines that did have puzzles was still mostly great fun and offered a layer of puzzle solving, but also, to me, at many times felt shorter than Breath of the Wild's bigger shrines. But still, it's hard to hate them in general when the game is still so much fun. And I love the new shrine music, all that stuff. And I still loved going into shrines. It's just just little niggles, just little niggles every now and then with these shrines. But still, I'm bouncing in between here. Still great. As for the depths, Crom, what a surprise. What an atmosphere. Nintendo effectively gave us a pitch black, alien looking mirror image and map of Hyrule, which no one expected. You could argue that the depths got more attention and were more integral to the story of Tears of the Kingdom than the Sky Kingdom was. We all remember our first descent into this place, our first jump into this place. And I love that noise it makes when you enter, the yeah, I thought it's just so good. The initial atmosphere down here for me was just pure horror. And Nintendo took pitch black to a whole new level. Without any light sources, you literally could not see in front of you, which was a whole level of epic. Then you'd have those moments when you dared venture into the darkness, not lighting the way, and then in the distance, a dimly lit structure would suddenly appear out of the void. Just incredible. So many great moments like this in the depths. Just incredible. You soon learn that the light roots illuminates a large area of the map, showing you this alien-like environment with strange plants and ancient ruins. These life fruits are a blessing at the start, but you know what? By the time I had lit a large number of them, I found myself almost missing the darkness. And the depths, was revealed to be fun, interesting, and foreboding mirror world of Hyrule. I thought the depths were amazing, in so many ways. And even towards the end, it still found ways to surprise me and offer an element to the game which I truly, truly loved. And when I start the game again, I'll be tempted to even not even light the light routes, unless I feel some are required. If I had one complaint, then when you get truly accustomed to the depths, its unique veil starts losing its appeal somewhat, especially like with the traversal and stuff. Which by that point, then you're creating just quick little fly machines to skip over everything. But honestly, this place, initial atmosphere wise, just wow. Just well done, Nintendo. Now, I won't go into the story here, as I don't want to majorly spoil anything about this game, but as I first mentioned, the story for me was the most exciting part of the sequel, and in virtually every way, Nintendo did not let me down. Apart from some of my previous theories and hopes, which I did in the preview video not coming to fruition, Zelda herself has grown so much as a character, both in these games and through Nintendo's eyes, I feel. And what I will say, and even argue based off how this game plays out, I actually consider this to be the very first Legend of Zelda game, or story perhaps. It's because across all these games as a trilogy, and especially Tears of the Kingdom, Zelda herself not only has a big part, her actions ultimately and fundamentally change the shape and course of Hyrule and its people, to the point where she literally has become legend, even with her name being constantly mentioned and whispered by the people of Hyrule. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, the most poignant and accurate description of a Zelda title ever, and I just can't get enough of it. Adding the new form of Ganondorf and other key story members, and I was left just loving every minute and guessing right up to the very end. And the end of the game, people, those final battles and the moments that follow, just by Chrome's golden beard, absolutely 100% peak Zelda and peak video game. Just peak. I can't describe how good it was and how it made me feel just beyond goosebumps. I just can't deal with anyone who says Zelda games have weak stories. I just can't do it. And the music, both in this game and in those final moments as well, just peak. I just get goosebumps. Last time I felt like that was the end of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which was also peak fiction. But my only criticism is that there are some truly epic story moments revealed in this game, and I feel that finding many of them in random order this time around actually weakens their impact somewhat, and it might have worked better if no matter what order you found the story moments in scattered across the world, they all play out in the correct order. But aside from that, just beyond greatness. So let's try to get to the end of this, shall we? Tears of the Kingdom set out to achieve what every sequel tries to achieve, to better its forerunner, right? And Tears of the Kingdom in many areas achieves this and then some. But also at the same time, I found that it faltered somewhat in a few areas, which could also, distract a little from this new experience. Something I don't remember feeling in Breath of the Wild. I personally consider this to be Nintendo's most complicated game in both game design and also what it asks of the player. The controls were far more demanding for item management than Breath of the Wild, which led to far more errors in execution, for me than before. Accidentally throwing my weapons multiple times, and also I felt like there's a little bit of input lag in the menus and stuff. You could also feel overburdened with what's on offer. I felt in this triple-layered, content-rich world with a multitude of resources to manage and find for the multitude of overlapping reasons. Never mind having to cycle through even more menus and items. My thoughts on the game's dungeons are mostly just extremely positive. But once again, because of your new godlike powers, even some of their puzzles were easier to manage than Breath of the Wild's. But even then, their designs, how you approach them, and many of the bosses were just so good, so engaging that I was literally having peak video game moments just at so many times. The busier Hyrule, although perhaps welcomed content-wise, also left it feeling perhaps too busy. Almost like every step you took had some new content to deal with. And in worlds this size, that can be both a blessing and a little bit of a curse. As an example, I grew tired of carrying Koroks. And whilst I mostly liked, but I ended up ignoring most of those Koroks because they're just more of a hassle to try and get them across somewhere than it was worth. And whilst I almost liked the holding up the Tarry Town signs as a fun little world puzzle, you quickly learned how to apply the same fix to everyone, so they stopped feeling unique, and I kind of even started running past some of those. There were also indeed some areas of Hyrule that saw little change, which is fine, of course, and to be expected. But it was in these areas where, when I checked my map after completion, they saw the least amount of travel from me. Whether that was perhaps of a bit of boredom or over familiarity, or even just a somewhat non-care for the particular area's aesthetics. Something I felt a little with Death Mountain, where I actually missed the dangerous lava being there. But once again, Death Mountain had its moments of epicness, that I still utterly loved. Among all these little gripes, Tears of the Kingdom for me is both easily one of the best Zeldas I've ever played, and easily one of the best video games ever made, and one of Nintendo's best games. Even in today's 4K, ray tracing, gigaflop world of expensive high-end looking games and consoles, Nintendo has once again achieved and shown the industry that the technology to make incredible, new, unique, industry-changing games has been there for years. It's just a matter of time, talent, and passion. So, do I consider Tears of the Kingdom to be greater than Breath of the Wild for me, personally? In many ways, absolutely. But overall, no. But that's the final comparison I'll make between both those games, because Tears of the Kingdom is its own Zelda, an adventure that I will never forget and will continue to play through the years to come. Thinking about all its many, and I mean many, great and epic moments that I have just not experienced in video games before. I've already rewatched the ending on YouTube like 10 times, and it still gives me goosebumps. So, if you'd like a score, man, this is tough. At many times it's a 10 out of 10, and sometimes it's a 9. Either way, I consider the game another perfect video game and another perfect Nintendo game, with highs and some mild lows, but ultimately I was left with a staggering experience, which after 200 hours left me at that same state that Breath of the Wild did, which was, what do I do with my gaming life now? Because I've just sampled greatness again, and nothing else will feel like will come close. I do truly feel we are living in the age of peak Nintendo, and the sky no longer feels like the limit.